Call the special workshop of the Destin City Council, December 14, 2020, to order. Skip, would you like to lead us in the pledge? I'd like to thank everyone for attending tonight. As chairman of this proceeding, this is not a regular city council meeting, it's a workshop. And to facilitate a fruitful meeting, I'd like to make these recommendations on tonight's proceedings. and I hope this helps establish the focus of the workshop and a few ground rules. For the council, the priority tonight is to be a listen and question session for the city council, and seeing how we're not going to take any actions or make any recommendations tonight, I want to encourage all the city council members to refrain as much as possible from giving opinion, especially me, and focus on hearing the various points of view and to ask clear questions when needed for clarification or to have the speaker expound on their comments. This is not a city council meeting, it's a workshop, and for the reasons stated above, I politely ask our council not to address any legal issues or ask hypothetical questions to our attorneys, even if they're statements from the public. There will be more appropriate times for our attorneys to have those discussions with our council prior to our regular city meeting and our weekly briefings on the agenda documents. For the public, commentators, and also just to let you guys know, is after every person speaks, I'm going to look to my right and my left to give you an opportunity to ask any questions or ask any clarification for any points that the person's made. So you have opportunity for that. For the public, for the commentators, I want you to point out your issues and suggestions in a clear, non-repetitive manner. Make your point one by one, solutions one by one, and try your best not to belabor or repeat yourself. I understand that it's hard to do, especially with emotions behind an issue that's important to you. I will assist you by politely pointing out that you've already made that point, and I'll ask you to move on to your next point. Also, I'll give an opportunity for council members after each commenter to ask them any clarifying questions before the next person's recognized. So as not to interrupt our speakers or their train of thought or comments, I ask each council member to please take notes and come back with those comments with your questions then at the end of their comments. Because I know when you get interrupted, it just blows your thought process. So we're going to try to make it easier on y'all. To facilitate an atmosphere of cooperative fact and solution finding, I'm not gonna have each commentator timed, which I'm opening myself up to having to ask you to wrap up your thoughts. But I'm going to try to, I just think that having that clock there is distracting and disturbing. I want to give people an opportunity. To facilitate, I will, however, facilitate the meeting when necessary and ask you to wrap up your comments in the next 30 seconds or less for the next person to have a chance. There are a couple of known spokespersons in this room who may be able to belabor most of the issues facing the industry. If they or any speaker before you have covered most of what you wanted to say, I encourage you to just walk up there, state your name, your address, and say, I agree with everything that the previous person's comments, and sit down. Or you can say, I agree with what has been said up to this point, but I would like to add, and just bring us something new. It helps the whole meeting, and we'll cover more ground, and we'll get the message a lot clearer that way. Again, if a point's already been made, I'll politely remind you that point's been made and ask you to move on to another point. If none are made, I'll ask you to sit down. And I will be nice, and I will be polite, and we're not under a timing, so that's why I got rid of the clock, is I want to get, there's a couple of you that are industry leaders, and I want to give you an opportunity to share your issues, give the council members time to ask you poignant questions afterwards, and then we can move on. There's a lot of people in the room, and I want to give everyone an opportunity to speak. But if most of the things have been said, so you can get your name and address on the public record, it's A-okay to say, I agree with everything the last 5 people have said, and it'll go in the public record. All right? With that being said, Mike, I saw you smile. Why don't you start right here? We'll start this side of the room. We'll work this way. You know the routine. Hit the button, name and address.
Mike Abity, 530 Harbor Boulevard. If it please the council, we have about 6 issues that we would like to discuss and go through. We'd like to take them one at a time. I'm going to take item number 1 and explain it. Somebody else is going to, and answer any questions and discuss it. Somebody else will take item number 2, and different individuals will take each item. So we kind of got it spaced out that way, but I don't want to discourage anyone who wants to come up and discuss any of these points to come up and take a point. But we've kind of got it streamlined so that it won't, 10 people aren't going to come and talk about the same things. So basically, the first item that we have is discuss the ordinance and moratoriums legality in relation to Florida state statutes. I know you said you weren't going to talk about the attorneys. I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to speak a whole lot of legalese. I'm just going to explain to you guys some of the information we received and some of the legal advice we're getting on this situation of the ordinance and the moratorium. There's basically 3 issues that we have with the moratorium and the ordinance. The first issue is the Florida State Statute 327.60, which Ms. Peggy Matthews has discussed a couple of times here already. You should all be aware of it already. And basically that statute states that it's a state statute that no city or county or municipality may enact, continue in effect, or enforce any ordinance or local regulation discriminating against personal watercraft. Okay? Now, when you created the livery vessel license, part of the second statute is going to be what affects this also. According to Florida Statute 32702, the city's definition of livery vessels and the state's definition of livery vessels differ. Okay, so we're concerned, does the city override the state or does the state override the city? I don't know, I'm not an attorney. I'm sure a judge will make that decision somewhere down the road if it gets that far. Okay, to the city, a livery vessel just means pontoon boats and jet skis. State livery vessels definition is pontoon boats, jet skis, and any charter fishing vessels, kayaks, paddle boards, all of those are included in the livery vessel definition. So when the city makes the ordinance, the livery vessel ordinance, and you exclude those other items, the fishing charter and the paddle boards and the kayaks, now you're discriminating against jet skis. That is the position of the American Water Sports Association. It's a national organization. It's based out of Washington, D.C. Ms. Peggy Matthews represents them in the state of Florida. She lobbies Florida. She's been doing this for over 20 years. She has given us some information on this and kind of guiding us how to proceed. Now that the election's over, she intends to, I'm going to be totally open and transparent here, she intends to approach the Attorney General to get a ruling on whether or not the city of Destin is in its rights to ignore this ordinance, and whether the city ordinance trumps the state ordinance. That being said, our position is because the city is in violation of the jet ski, of the discriminating against the jet skis, we think it makes that ordinance that the city ignored the state ordinance, so it makes the livery vessel licensing questionable, which also makes the moratorium questionable because it also discriminates against jet skis because it only names jet skis and pontoon boats. Basically, I have 3 recommendations for the council. The first recommendation is do nothing, leave it exactly like it is, and we'll end up in, I guess we'll end up in court somewhere down the road to see who's right, who's wrong, okay? But just take into consideration, if we're fortunate enough to where a judge votes in our favor and vacates the livery vessel license and the moratorium, okay, then we also want all of our monies back for the last 4 years once we get a court ruling, okay? That's first option is leave everything alone, let the courts handle it. The second option is add fishing vessels to the ordinance and to the moratorium, charter fishing vessels, not commercial vessels, charter fishing vessels. And if you add that, it takes away the discrimination against jet skis, and it makes that ordinance legal, and it takes away our fight. We don't have a court fight. The third option, and I know that's not good for the fishermen, and it's not good for the charter fishermen, but it's an option. The third option is remove jet skis from from both ordinance and the moratorium. Once the jet skis are out, we don't have an argument, we don't have a court fight, we don't have an argument there, because there is no state statutes to protect pontoon boats. There's only state statutes to protect jet skis and personal watercraft. So if you take the jet skis out, we got no fight. If you put the fishing boats in, we got no fight. If you leave the ordinance as it is, we got a fight. So you've got the first ordinance of discrimination, you got the second ordinance of the difference in the definition between what a livery vessel is and what a livery vessel is not. And then the third rule I'll throw in, which is kind of like my personal rule, is kind of like the golden rule, do unto others as you have others do unto you. What you guys are doing to us, and I know you represent the fishing industry, you do it to us, but you don't want to do it to the fishermen. So, I mean, you could do it to us, you're not going to do it to them, so why not? If it's good enough for us, why isn't it good enough for them? That's all I got. Questions?
Anybody have any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Who's coming up next? Who's next? I'll look to who's in line after you get all your points in, and then I'll open up to the general public. All right? I think that'll help the meeting. I appreciate you guys as an organization setting it up in this format. Thank you.
John Stevens, 200 Harbor Boulevard. I guess before I go into the amendments to the ordinance, a couple things I noticed on the application packet. Item 1, we noticed that the right to conduct business document was missing from the application packet where it was in previous years. Item 2, on the checklist, it doesn't include the acknowledgements document. It's missing the livery vessel permit application document just on the checklist. So we can go through the checklist and we can somehow miss those. So we just need to make sure those get added to the checklist. And then also,
John, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Can you repeat what the first item was before?
Yep, the right to conduct business, that document on the checklist, it says we need it, but it wasn't included from staff. Second one, just items missing on the checklist. It was 2 documents that was provided by staff. One is the acknowledgements document, and then the other one is the livery vessel permit application document. Item 3, it talks about restrooms on the checklist about being 200 feet. If I remember correctly from a previous amendment, that was removed to where it just had to be on the property. So those are just a couple things I noticed when doing the application recently. So now going into the amendments to the Destin livery ordinance, pretty much a couple meetings ago, these same items were brought up. A previous council member actually suggested to staff to actually try to get these written into the second reading, and I never heard anything back about what happened to it. So the first one was section 13-149, which was renewals, expiration of permit. It was more or less just, let me take a step back, I'm sorry. We were told that, city will be okay with doing these changes if we talk to the city. The problem is a lot of the members felt verbal wasn't good enough. They really wanted it in writing on it. So going back to section 13-149, renewals and expiration of the permit, pretty much states all permits shall be valid no longer than 12 months. Key thing on that one is if you apply in November, that means it expires the following November. Where I feel like if you apply early, you shouldn't be penalized. You should let it last until March 1st. So it could be up to, what's that, 15 months, as long as it expires on March 1st. Item 2, which is section 13-148. It's in regards to permit not transferable needs to be amended. Pretty much, it's pretty much if the vendor is an entity of any kind, the ownership of or the entity is sold, if it's transferred, et cetera, et cetera. It only talks about the permit being revoked. It doesn't talk about anything about transferring the permit. And I think that was some of the stuff that was discussed at previous meetings. Then the next one is about if the business sells, we have to notify the city within 10 days of the new owner. We feel like this should be extended past 10 days. I don't know what that number would be. I mean, 30, 60 days. I mean, whatever we can come to agreement on that. And I think that's pretty much it. I mean, in that document that they provided, I just talked about scenarios of transfer medallions. But I mean, as long as we get some of these amendments done to the ordinance, I think we'll be okay.
Anybody have any questions for John at this point? I've got one. Basically, what you're asking for is under section 13-149, your recommendation is if somebody applies early, still let basically the permits from March 1 to March 1, even
Bingo.
if you apply early.
Bingo. I mean,
Or
why you
would
penalize
it be
us?
better, would it be more acceptable just to make it in that calendar year? It start running, the permits are valid January 1 through December 31, which covers I mean, that just makes, to me, it makes a little bit more sense. I know we're seasonally based.
Whatever y'all decide, it just needs to be modified one way or another.
Okay.
So.
All right. Any questions? Go ahead, Dewey.
Perhaps this might be a question for staff. Right to conduct business, what does that mean? I've not seen that in other applications.
Can you answer that?
That refers to like a contract or a lease to be able to be on that property.
Okay, so you're looking for a lease between the vendor and the property owner?
Yes, sir.
Is that standard in other situations where people lease restaurants or lease other businesses?
No, sir, not to my knowledge.
And so is the rationale behind making that apply to the library vessels and not other businesses is?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well.
We'll
maybe
try to get
come
an
up with
answer for that one. Go ahead, Mr. Braden. Do you have,
I had,
go ahead, Mr. Destin.
just to clarify for me the transfer issue, that's transferring medallions inside of your own business entity, is that correct?
Correct. Or no, or just like if, let's say if Mike wanted to buy some of my medallions, or if I wanted to buy some of his medallions.
Okay, at that point, you would have to come back and show you had the parking and the other things is,
Yeah, as long as that's good, we should be able to, I mean, it's pretty much says we can't do it. So,
okay, well, it would complicate things a tad, so, one we can consider.
Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. Apologize about running late tonight. We just talked about this not long ago, that we do require the beach service guys come in, they have to have a contract or something with the property owner, just a letter or something saying that they have the right to conduct business on that property.
Take note of that, Lewis, and maybe compare other industries as well, just for clarity. Go ahead.
Yes, I think the council member is correct. We didn't quite get the question earlier. You do require somebody's permission to operate from their property. We require that of our land use laws, as well as the case that the council member just mentioned with beach vendors.
Is that a burden?
oh, with that document?
Yes.
So.
Or you just want it to be clarified that it's required?
Well, the issue, the checklist says it's required, but it wasn't included in our packet. So.
Point taken. All right, any other questions for John? All right?
Okay.
Who's next up, Mike? Who's your next person? We're going to take the 6 pre-designated folks, and then I'll come around to everyone else. Are you one of them? Okay.
Thank you. All right, Greg Fisher, 35 Red Bay Court. Mr. Jarvis, good to see you again. Look forward to getting one of your charter boats for 50% off with the CVB. All right, before I begin, I want to read the purpose of the permitting of livery vessel rentals. I just think it's important just to hear it first before I start talking. I'll just take a moment. City Council, City of Destin recognizes that the unregulated rental of livery vessels by the public impacts the welfare of historic working waterfront and jeopardizes the health, safety, and welfare of the city's residents, property owners, and visitors. Therefore, it is necessary and in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare to monitor and provide reasonable means to ensure adherence to state laws and ensure safe and responsible operation of such livery vessels. The unregulated rental of livery vessels has led to instances of unlicensed businesses renting livery vessels to inexperienced operators, which has led to unsafe conditions in the waters of the city during many times of the year. The requirements of a permit for each livery vessel, which shall be rented out within the city, and the permit fees collected and used to support the Code Enforcement Division in enforcing this ordinance will allow the city to effectively regulate and monitor livery vessels being rented by businesses within the city, which is reasonably related to protecting the public health, safety, and welfare of the city's residents and visitors, and also reasonably related to preserving the historic working waterfronts of the city. Show of hands, how many people before the moratorium were unlicensed livery vessel rental operators? 0. So I just want to point that out. Second question, what does preserving the historic working waterfront of the city mean to each council member? Can I ask that question? I'm sorry. Sure, okay. Okay, food for thought. But I hope to hear that. Also,
We're trying not to be the show here tonight.
Okay,
We want you
all
to
right.
be the show, because we all have our opinions, and we'll probably express those in a regular council meeting.
good,
You
all
can
right.
ask that question then.
all right, well, I want to, for food for thought. Second is, this ordinance seems to be about safety, welfare of the city's residents and visitors, so I also want us to think about that. And also, you heard in that proposal, or the purpose, about adhering to state laws. So we heard about state laws just recently. Now, I'm talking about capacity studies, so I went off a little on a tangent, but has anyone been through a harbor capacity study involving the Army Corps of Engineers? So obviously you can't answer that, but I just want you to think about it. Next, has anyone been aware of how long it actually takes to do a capacity study through the Army Corps of Engineers? What are the goals of the study? Can we get the goals of the study? Yeah. Just curious.
Our proposed study is supposed to be between March and November of this coming year. The purposes are to get a good sense to the city about how well we're doing as far as economic development in the harbor, how well we're doing as far as tourism aspects in the harbor, and also the environmental aspects in the harbor.
Okay. All right, and did I hear about, just looking at what the harbor can take as far as maximum capacity of is that part of it?
Yeah, this is somewhat different from the one that was conducted up in Key West, where
Okay.
they did look at that. We're not looking at it from a theoretical standpoint. We're not coming up with any scenarios. We want the true experience of folks that are visiting our community and getting a sense of how things are working.
Yeah. Can we all agree here that the harbor is congested already? There's a lot of people using our waterways. And another thing too, with the growth of neighboring communities that are coming to Destin, such as Shalimar, Fort Walton, people from 38 are even coming here now, it kind of disenfranchises the businesses in Destin, because we could do this study and we can say, yes, it's really busy out there, and any of us here can agree that we have congestions in our waterways. But there's only so many businesses, even if we lifted the moratorium tomorrow, there's only so many businesses that can go in Destin. But a lot of businesses can go in Fort Walton, Shalimar, 30A, Sandestin, they're putting boats, Niceville, they're all coming here. So it kind of disenfranchises us in the fact that you stop businesses from opening here in Destin, and they're going to be opening up all over, not to mention the amount of out-of-state boaters that are coming here and taking up our waterways. So I just think this capacity study in terms of telling us whether or not we can add more boats here is just preposterous. Because no matter what happens to this capacity study, we can't add more boats. You know, we're congested enough. So we all know that's going to come out of this. So if that's the answer that we're looking for, it just doesn't seem to even make sense. So we have a very complex marine ecosystem here. We all know that. I just want to kind of reiterate, why should we do a harbor capacity study if we already know the answer? Because this Florida Keys example, if you guys have seen the Florida Keys, and he just mentioned it here, it took 3 years to complete that harbor capacity study with the Army Corps of Engineers. And I know one was done in the 90s, and it took, maybe a few months. I don't think that's the case here. And the one in the Keys, what I thought was kind of funny, they did it in 1996, it took 3 years to complete. And they said that the marine environment was too complex to assess for meaningful conclusions. So guess what? Nothing even came out of it. They just said it was just too complex. So I just want to make sure that if we're going to spend $200,000, that we know that there's something meaningful that's going to come out of it, because with the Florida Keys and the Army Corps of Engineers, nothing did come out of it. So this could be a situation where we're just kicking the can down the road where we can make meaningful resolution here and just figure out what we need to do. So that's all I pretty much have regarding
Thank you,
the
sir.
capacity study.
Anyone have any questions for Greg? Seeing none, thank you very much. You're next.
Sorry. My name is Maya Schilder, 45 Ferry Road, Fort Walton Beach. I kind of wanted to talk about the application process, because we had multiple times in council meetings, and I'd even heard some council members agree that the process should be streamlined. All of us are multi-year operators. We have been approved. Our parking hasn't changed. Our fueling hasn't changed. None of that stuff has changed. Yet this year's application has more pages. It has more hoops for us to jump through. For those of us who lease property, it has multiple hoops that our landlords have to jump through. And I'm just trying to figure out, at what point did we all go from, or many of us go from, let's make it easier on us, to let's make it more bureaucracy and more paperwork and more difficult for us. And that's all this has done this time. It has added things in the acknowledgement pages that were not there in previous years. Things that apply to some of us, but not all of us. We have multiple locations. We have 2 locations in Destin, 2 company names. We apply for 2 different livery sets. However, we're overall one corporation, and our equipment flows between both locations. There's an acknowledgement that I have to sign now that states that if I have a boat or a jet ski that breaks down in the harbor, I'm not allowed to use a jet ski from my Calhoun Avenue location. It has to stay there. There's also been issues before that we have asked the staff over and over again. We rent out 35 jet skis, but I own 55. I only have slips for the 35. There's no way for me to rent any more jet skis. Those other skis are for maintenance, for safety, for when we have an accident, for when we have a ski go down, for our chase skis, and the city has continuously refused to give us the amount of extra livery stickers for maintenance issues or for chase skis. My insurance requires me per location to have 2 chase skis on the water. We're supposed to have spotters out. They give you 2 extra livery stickers each year for each location for your total equipment. That's not for 2 jet skis. That's not for 2 for your boats. If you have boats go down, that's 2 total. So let's say my spotters are out. Well, use those chase skis. Let's say I have somebody that has a ski, we have a ski that goes down on the dock. Am I not supposed to replace that ski with the ski in our maintenance fleet? They've never addressed that issue after being asked multiple times to have that issue clarified. But I'm still just going to go back. We are all approved. Those of us sitting here, there is a moratorium in place. We are veteran operators. Y'all know us, the community knows us, code enforcement definitely knows us. The staff knows us at this point. There's no reason that the affidavit of no change should have been taken out this year, and they took it out. They completely removed it from the packet. So there is no option for us to streamline. They made it not only, they didn't make it any easier, and my other issue with it is that last year there was an affidavit of no change, and I'd like to just get a raise of hands of operators who got their permits this year before the season started. Turned your application in, but you got your permits before your season started. Can I see a show of hands who got their permits in June? Can I see a show of hands who got them after July? The city can't handle all of this paperwork. The city has not been able to handle and process all of the documentation that they're asking us for when they were asking us last year for 3 pieces of paper. Now they're asking us for 10. We're in a pandemic. So this year, when will we get them? I mean, we still have to pay for them even if we don't get them on time. I think I heard somebody didn't get theirs until December. They were closed. So, I mean, at what point are we not going to try to make this, look, moratorium's in effect right now, okay? If it's in effect, then make it easier on those of us who have been approved to conduct business. There is not another thing. You know, you said that beach rental operators have to show a copy of a right to conduct business. I don't know very many other businesses have to turn in their sales tax certificate. Can I ask staff, do any other businesses, when getting licensed for a business license, do they have to turn in their state sales tax exemption certificate, resale certificate? No? Liability insurance proof? Restaurants, bars, amusement parks, anybody? Retail, does anybody else have to turn in liability stuff? No? We already have to turn that into FWC. We have to turn it into, I mean, we're providing this, it has become cumbersome, and you're only doing it to us. There is not another business who has a 10-page application that's already been in business for multiple years. Nobody else has to do this, just us. And that's where it becomes very, very discriminatory towards us. I really appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you. Okay, hold on.
For the people that received their permits after July and August, were they not doing business when they didn't have them?
We were open, but we still had that cloud over our head that code enforcement could show up. Yes.
So if code enforcement showed up,
we would just have to.
But you were still doing business?
We were still doing business, yes. But I'm also paying several $1,000s for stickers that I don't have.
Gotcha. Was there anything specific in this year's application that's different than last year that you have an issue with? I know you kind of said there's a lot of hoops, but was there something specific that's adding to the cumbersome
Yes.
point of doing it?
Well, first of all, last year, I could turn in one sheet of paper that was an affidavit of no change, which meant my parking was the same, my fueling was the same, my landlord signed one piece of paper, and I gave you a list of my vessels, and that was basically it. This year, there has to be a parking plan, parking agreements. This is all stuff that has to be done and notarized by my landlord, one landlord lives in Birmingham and very hard to get a hold of. And I'll have to resubmit the land lease, I have to resubmit the restroom things. The restroom issue of the 200 feet came back into it, and it didn't used to be into it. So, yeah.
So two main things would be the parking plan and the parking agreement are new this year. They weren't
Well, yeah,
last
but
year.
then if you sign an affidavit of no change, then you don't have to go get your fueling plan recertified with the fire department.
I understand that, but the two new things this year are the parking plan and parking agreement that weren't in there
The
last year.
parking
Because if you have to
agreement-
resubmitting is like, you keep it on file and you just, resubmit.
Well, you have to
following
go
it,
to the
but-
fire department, you have to get it signed by him. Then you have, it's more steps. Last year, like I said, it was a one-step, one piece of paper, list my vessels, sign everything, fax it over to Sharon, and you were done.
Okay.
You've made that abundantly clear that it's not
Yeah.
easy.
No.
Okay. Anything else, Kevin?
I was going to ask the requirement for listing all current and existing uses operating on property. And this might be a staff question, but what's acceptable documentation? It says it's responsibility of the property owner, but is there a form for that specific item that says to list all current and existing uses on operating on property?
We just need the names, and from the names, we can go to our files and ensure that those businesses are in operation.
Just
And the
basic
whole-
information.
Yeah, and the whole idea of that site plan is to ensure that the parking that's allocated to the business that's already there is still there, and also that the additional parking that's requested for this business here is available. We've had a tremendous amount of, and I think code enforcement can attest to that, challenges as far as parking is concerned.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, just real quick, I mean, the parking agreement page for my landlord to do is 2 pages. It's not just
That's fine.
the names.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. That was fine. I appreciate the additional information. I'm just trying to understand more.
Yeah, and.
Thank you.
And this is for staff. There's real apparent we need to look into processes here. I just wonder why the livery vessel operator has to fill out a page or get the information about all the facilities on the property and the parking of other businesses when that's not what they do. I don't understand why that's a requirement on them. Maybe that's a requirement that any landowner that's, having businesses on his property, like Mr. Destin's got multiple different operations going on his property. That's really should be his responsibility, not the people leasing from him.
Yeah, the last time we did discuss this matter, we did say that responsibility is on the property owner that owns that property. Since they are working collaboratively to prove that they're getting parking from them, they should get that listing from the property owner.
Isn't that already on file?
So next year, as you know, we're going to be going in automation, all that information will be captured. And so the next registration they have, all they need to do is enter their name or their email address, and all that information that they're currently entering right now will be captured, and it will populate the screen, and then all their new renewals will be so easy to do once we go live in January.
Well, when we get this on the agenda, I think the council will all want to come up with some ideas how to help the directors of the different groups that are responsible for livery vessel registration, if we'll streamline our process. Any other questions? Go ahead, Mr. Ramswell.
Can you talk to me a little bit about this affidavit of no change and why it was no longer a possibility?
What we've discovered with the affidavit of no change is, although things may not have changed with the livery vessel business on those properties, sometimes there could be 10 more businesses on the property which would affect the parking. So basically, even if they're saying their stuff hasn't changed, and that's why we required the parking plan from the property owners, because it's not necessarily that things changed from their business, but from the property as a whole.
Okay, so my immediate thought would be that's not their fault or their problem. That would be on the property owner.
Yeah, that's another thing we'll bring up at our council meeting. And, the good thing about this is we're going to receive this input, and as individuals, we can talk with Lance and Lewis and Dave and Joey on, hey, I'm taking notes. because I'm going to bring some of this stuff up, because, they're bringing up some valid points that we need to address as a council, and we will address, because we are going to have to take actions on these. So we may not address them to your liking, but we're going to take this stuff up. So I appreciate all the things you point out. Do you have anything else to add to your comments
I
at this
just want to
time?
reiterate, I think that no other business has to jump through these hoops.
Right. We got that part.
I think we just want it to be fair across the board.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You got anyone else, Mike? Oh, never mind. Stay up there. I'm sorry, Mr. Destin. Go ahead.
Yeah, you stated that some of the rules applied to some and not others. Can you give an example of that?
Well, I mean, a restaurant doesn't have to supply
I'll
all
let
of this
you-
documentation. They
Right.
don't have to prove if they rent somewhere, I don't know that they have to provide to the city. First of all, a restaurant doesn't have to get a sticker for every chair they fill on their seat in the restaurant. We do. For every boat we have, we got to get a sticker for it. And we've got to jump through all of these hoops for that. Nobody else has to provide you with insurance. They just said that. No other business has to do that. No other business has to give you their sales tax information. There aren't other businesses that has had this kind of paperwork burden and financial burden of put on us that like we have. And look, I get them, I get kind of where y'all are coming from, but if the moratorium is going to stand, if it is, then we have been doing this. We actually are the good guys, and we want you guys to know that. We're the good guys. I've got a file over there with pictures from local marinas in the season that thousands of out-of-state vessels that come here that you guys I don't know that you guys even recognize. They get dropped in at marinas who never get any kind of instruction on the water, who put their 13-year-old kids on jet skis and send them out to Crab Island. We're the good guys. We just need to work together and feel like we're part of a team.
And I appreciate that clarification. I was concerned maybe you were saying the rules were applied unevenly within your industry itself.
No.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Braden, did you have something you'd like to ask? Hold on.
Yeah.
Is that to her or staff?
Well, it's just some of the comments that's been made, and I mean, I want to go ahead and address them now while we're talking about it. To compare a livery vessel to a restaurant, to me, is just ludicrous. It's
Rodney, I appreciate it. You weren't here when we first started. I asked our council members to refrain on commentary and focus on questions or clarification, because we're going to have that opportunity in our regular council proceeding when this thing comes to us. You'll be able to share I know where you're going with that particular one, but in the interest of time, because, we want to get out of here, every member of this council, when we come up and bring these up as our action agenda items, we're going to be able to share our comments. So I'm trying to keep it focused on questions to the speakers for clarification, or just for knowledge, questions for staff. Okay, so not to make you mad, but you weren't here when I made that statement. I'm just trying to facilitate that part of the meeting, because we will have these discussions and these comparisons that this year. Are you good with that? Thank you, sir. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next up, you got any more, Mike, representing your group? After that, will he be the last point man? We'll go ahead and I'll just start right over here, and we'll just work all the way across the room, and everybody can speak that wants to speak. Go ahead, sir.
Ed Rogers, 500 Harbor Boulevard. They give me number 4 and number 6, so I'm just going to do both of them. But and I'm going to, I know you said if we had some of the same issues, I want to clarify some of Mia's comments. She's spot on. This whole regulatory process, we're regulated big time, more than anybody. And we've jumped through those hoops, and we shouldn't have to do it every single year, and every single year the regulatory bar keeps going up and up. And I got my livery license December 5th. Nothing's changed in probably 10 years of my business, the number of boats. Nothing's changed since we started this livery. I made 3 separate trips to the city. 2 times the documents were in my file. They called me and told me that I had them. I got another call saying, come get your stickers. I said, I've been closed for a month and 5 days. Well, we don't want you to think that you didn't get your stickers. Now, with that said, I was allowed to operate my business the whole season. But I did have a couple of trips from Mr. Baslak, and he's a good guy. He's always very cordial, but, you know, that weighs on you when you're trying to operate your business. And the staff cannot handle the amount of paperwork that we're putting on them now. They cannot. They tell you they can, it's not true. Because every year, there are my colleagues that late in the season, they're just getting their livery license. So I don't know why we want to create more paperwork, especially when they already have all of that information already. You know, she had talked about the affidavit. The affidavit was a good thing because a lot of things that don't change from year to year, you could sign that and you don't have to produce it. And if somebody cheats, we've got code enforcement. And if you put teeth in penalties, people won't cheat. And it's not going to keep people from cheating. Somebody could fill out the whole application and cheat. So I just don't understand why they got rid of the affidavit. In fact, last February, we had a meeting, and Mr. Lewis had said, I don't want you guys to think that we're anti-business. And I do think they're anti-business because their actions, everything they do, makes my business harder to do. And I jump through all the hoops. I try to run a first-rate business. I try to do everything right. And it just seems like there's more and more piled onto us every year, and I don't understand it. In fact, most of us thought that the affidavit was going to get longer, that they were going to put some more items on it. So we were really surprised when it disappeared. And I own my property, but for a lot of folks that are renting, for them to have to go to their business, to the property owner, and then he has to allocate where every space is, that's just crazy.
That point's been made.
It was,
Keep coming, Ed.
and you know, I know, but you guys might need to hear it a whole lot because it is.
Not tonight, okay?
It's a problem, you know? I had to do it for my business this year, and my partner said, I'm not regulated by them. Why do I have to give them that information? And I said, I don't know, you know? He said, I'm not regulated by them. He didn't give it to me. He didn't have to go do my homework. So I would ask that the city and the city staff and the council consider making that process more streamlined. One, so that they can do the paperwork, and two, so that it's not the burden on us. We don't mind doing it. And I think that if they would streamline that maybe, you know, one of the reasons we've done this paperwork to begin with was to make it safer out there on the water with the pontoon guys. Today, we had a meeting before this meeting, and I found out there's a website where regular folks could list their boats for rent in Destin. In the summer, there were 200 boats a day, and these are individuals, 200. And those folks, I can tell you, they do not have insurance because my insurance company will not cover me unless they can come to my marina and inspect my facility. They're not paying sales tax. They're probably not doing a lot of things. They're just, you know, some guy trying to make a few bucks. I'm not against a guy trying to make a few bucks. But when you're putting the burden on us and you're talking about in the moratorium how we're creating an unsafe environment and we're having a negative impact on the environment and all kinds of other things, and almost as many boats as rental boats in the harbor are breaknecks out there renting, you know, it just hits us in a bad way. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is last year we got a letter telling us that we couldn't park our pontoon boats on our property. And I've not heard anything about it yet this year, but I got a letter saying I was illegal because I was not approved for that use on that property. And one of the things on this application are all the uses on the property. Now, the city may tell you that that's to find out what other businesses are there, but I'm reading between the lines because I've seen it. They did it to us last year. They said, well, you're not approved for storage. I'm not storing anything. I run a livery business. Part of a livery business is pulling your boats out, getting them cleaned up, taking the upholstery to get fixed, fixing the dings and nicks and bangs, and either selling those boats or putting them back in the water. And we have to do that somewhere. And I understand if you've got another business and that parking is dependent on the other business you're running, but Mike's got a restaurant, it's closed. My business is closed. My partner's business is closed. Most of us on the harbor, we're shut down, and that's where we do that work. We shouldn't have another burden put on us to buy another piece of property in Destin for $500,000 and then have those boats there. The boats have to go somewhere, and it makes sense to put them on our property. If the city's worried about how it looks, and they want to talk to us about making it to where it just doesn't look like, a dump, I'm all for that. And you look at my property, I try to put them on as neatly as possible. We make sure we don't ever leave a mess at the end of the day, but, last year they did it, and we didn't have any time to think about where we might put those boats. And if they do it again this year, if we get a letter the next couple weeks, well, they waited again till the end of the season when we didn't have time to plan for it, when we don't have any place to put it. And it's just, those are the kind of burdens that we've dealt with every single year. And it makes I worked in DC for years, and I wish that I'd been doing this my whole life. I mean, I love this town, and I love what I do, and I love the people that I'm around. And the only thing that makes me think about not doing it is that burden that we get beat up over. So, thank you.
I read in the Harbor CRA minutes from 16 or 17, what he's talking about, the parking lot, parking your boats out there. Is that an ordinance that was created that they're not allowed to park their boats in the parking lot during the off-season? Or where's that rule come into place if it was ever put into place?
No, sir, that has not been passed. You're right, the Harbor CRA Advisory Board did talk about that. The issues that we have with it is a couple parts of the Land Development Code where when you park your vessels in required parking, you're using the required parking, and also for outdoor storage, it's not screened properly, which is also part of our Land Development Code as far as outdoor storage. So, but it does not, the things discussed by the Harbor CRA, I don't believe that's ever gone to council. These are two other parts of the Land Development Code.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
And we did get letters from the city saying you're in violation. So,
Oh, the LDC.
thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, Mike, one more shot, and then I'm going to open it up to general public.
Sorry, appreciate it.
I normally don't do that,
Wait, now I have a question.
You do? Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
As Mr. Rogers walked away, he was saying they did get letters for being in violation of that. Is it actually an ordinance? And you're saying it is an ordinance, it just didn't come through council, the last discussions? Or can you clarify that?
From what I understand, in 16, it was discussed with the Harbor CRA Advisory Board, and I believe even the current Harbor CRA Advisory Board has kind of brought this subject up also, but to my knowledge, it was never brought up for discussion with council. It's just some recommendations, I think, that they're saying where they'd like to see vessels stored maybe on trailers and other things to make it more aesthetically pleasing.
So are the letters that people are receiving, are they just warnings or informational, or are they actual tickets?
No, ma'am, they were actual code violations.
How can it be a code violation if it didn't come to council and be passed by council?
Because they were in violation of other parts of the Land Development Code, specifically using required parking, and also for not meeting the conditions of outdoor storage.
Okay, I'm going to want to dig into this at our next meeting for whoever is taking notes, but please look into this.
And we were
Thanks.
told that we were not allowed to
You got to,
Microphone.
That's it, you got a letter too.
Yeah, I'm going to address the same thing.
We were told we were not allowed to be there because that we were not a storage facility and that the code, land development code said that we were not approved in that area for a storage facility. And our side to that is that we're not a storage facility. We're not storing our boats. We are doing what we have to do to get our boats ready so we can put them back in the water and make money. And we're closed at the time.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, so we got that covered. So you're bringing me something new
I'll just-
before I open
well,
it
let
up?
me just say, let me make a couple of points on that. When they issued those letters last year, Ms. Ramswell, they issued 7 letters, 7 letters that they sent out that were in code violation of the code.
To different people, or you're saying you?
7 different people, 7
Okay.
different businesses. I rode around town, I noted 11 similar violations, okay, that they said Ma was in violation of. I noticed 11 locations that had the same violation. The 7 letters that were sent out were only to livery vessel operators. The other 4 businesses that were not livery vessel operators did not receive letters of violation. I call that targeting. You can call it what you want, I call it targeting. Okay? That's illegal. That is wrong. If it's not legally wrong, it's morally wrong to target us for that. Again, the single word that causes a complication in this whole matter is the word storage. You give me a license, I pay a lot of money to get my license to run a livery vessel business. Livery vessel business includes livery vessels, but you tell me I can't put my livery vessels on my property, that I own my property and I own livery vessels, and I can't put them on my property? Something's wrong, guys, and it's only livery vessels, okay? Mr. Destin had a boat and a trailer in his parking lot the last few days, okay? Did he get a letter? Yeah. Beauchamps has one for sale in their parking lot. Did they get a letter? Just asking.
Let
I'll
me
get
ask
on to
staff a real quick question. Are those letters available for us to take a look at? Because I'd like to see the contents before our next meeting.
Yes, the ones from last year had more to do with the storage in the South Harbor and North Harbor mixed use and the change of use. So, but we did not, we held off on that after we had talked about it because we were going to have further discussion with it. So they were not pursued.
Great. If they're allowable legally for council to take a look at and see what they say, I really appreciate getting to take a look at the contents and what's cited and where it is referenced in code.
That should be a public document, I would think. Mike, you got
And
one more point?
And in fairness to staff, I did talk to Mr. Lewis about that issue last year after we got the letters, and they did send us a letter not revoking the violation, but tabling it until further notice. So right now, we're not technically in violation, but we're not free and clear, and we would like the council to address that ASAP. The last issue that we had on this item is, and Ed covered it a little bit, was the outlaws. We call them outlaws, the people that are operating without livery vessel licenses. When this whole thing started in 2016, when the Harbor CRA met, the first thing Mr. Green and them were talking about on that panel was, we want to get rid of the guys that are causing the problem. We want to get rid of guys that are operating illegally, don't have insurance, don't have a brick and mortar place to operate out of. So they were going to go after those guys and get those guys. So they started, let's have a livery vessel license. Since then, I would like to ask code enforcement, or you can ask code enforcement, how many outlaws have they caught? How many citations have been issued? How much money has the city collected from the outlaws? And if they say they can't find the outlaws, guys, do we have a tech personnel on the city staff that can get on a computer and Google pontoon boats for rent in Destin? And I guarantee in the summertime, you'll find 100 of them. You also, don't you have an employee that works at Joe's Bayou? that sits there at Joe's Bayou and watches boat going out, give him a camera and let him take a picture. I guarantee you, there's a dozen boats, dozens of boats that go out every day. People call, they book them online. The people bring their pontoon boats to Joe's Bayou. They sign the contract, they collect the money, they put them on there. Do they have insurance? Do they have a city vessel? Do they have livery vessel permits? Very easy to catch them. You can catch a lot of them. I bet the city has not got one of them in the last 4 years. Am I wrong? Have you cited anybody for violation of rent and visit livery vessels without a license?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right.
Can we have those numbers for the next meeting as well, please?
All right. Now, we've heard from industry, their spokespeople, and I appreciate every comment made. It's given us plenty of food for thought. But now I'm going to start right over here in this far corner because I think Mr. Eller would like to speak. And then I'm just going to work right across the room. Again, I want to reiterate, if you agree with everything that's been said, but you have nothing to add, just say I agree with everything's been said up to this point, and you can sit down. If you have something to add that we haven't heard, then we really welcome those comments. So, Mr. Eller, would you like to come up? And then I'm just going to work right across the room, and y'all can come up if you'd like to talk.
Mike Eller, 3794 Indian Trail, Destin. Comments from a charter boat captain. This is my 32nd year operating a boat in the harbor. The pontoon boats are obviously the biggest issue for us charter fishermen. We have more problems with the pontoon boats than we have with the jet skis. Jet skis are pretty small. They can get out of your way pretty easy. A lot of times they're in and out with a team leader. And for me, I probably have a lot less interaction with jet skis, though I have had tourists on a jet ski get scared because they couldn't steer and jump off their jet ski, and I had to go in reverse to let the jet ski pass in front of me as they swam across the harbor. We don't have a big problem with out-of-town boats. We see the out-of-town boats. We can tell by the registration that they're out-of-town boats and little bass trackers and all that kind of stuff. We don't have a big problem with them. There's usually people that own their own boats and are used to operating their own boats, and so we don't really have a whole lot of negative interaction with them. And we certainly don't have much negative interaction with other charter boats, other dolphin cruise boats, or any of the boats that are working in the harbor that have a professional driving them. The scariest part of my day, by far, is coming back into the harbor. When my captain's license is at risk the most, it's when I'm coming back into the harbor or departing the harbor during the middle of the day for a half-day trip or coming back in. I recognize how important the pontoon boat business is to Destin and the harbor, obviously by the demand, the people that are out there, and I think it's a good thing. I think limiting the number of pontoon boats is the proper thing. If we can limit the number of jet skis, I think it's a good thing too, but if we can't, we can't. If charter boats are going to be lumped in together as livery vessels, I would say that with the pontoon boats, I guess what y'all have done is said, okay, what we have is, that's it, there won't be any more. If you were going to put charter boats in there, I would think that you would set a number a little bit higher than what we have in the harbor right now. Though I would tell you ultimately, if push came to shove and charter boats, too many charter boats operating out of the Destin harbor became a problem and the citizens started complaining and everybody started complaining, then I wouldn't object to us having a moratorium on them too. Too much of anything is bad. And so if it's charter boats, if it's dolphin cruise boats, whatever it is, in this particular case, it happens to be pontoon boats and jet skis. So I applaud the people that operate out of the harbor. I think they're a little naive when they think they give this people their required test and off they go. It's a freaking joke. Those people have no idea about the current around the mouth of the harbor, around the bridge. They're scared. They don't. It's just a joke. It's extremely dangerous. And yep, they took their test. And yeah. But So anyway, I think that the city's on the right track. I think we should have a moratorium on them, and I think you should just figure out a really fair way to do it with them. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Eller. Any questions for Captain Miller? All right. Continue right here, right behind you. John, you already got to talk. I let Mike up, so I done opened the door, so you can come up next, and then we'll continue to the left. Go ahead, sir.
Bill McKissick, 151 Calhoun Drive. We touched on a bunch of things today, and mine might be a little different than what the conversation's mainly been about today, but the captain's idea is safety. And I think that's probably the most important thing that we could solve tonight being here or in the future. I just so happen to sell pontoon boats, so safety is really important to me. And so there's some kind of way that we probably need to find some kind of way that we can improve the education and skill set for renting pontoon boats. He was talking about the test. The test that they give and the video they watch is not remotely adequate for our area. They don't talk about current, they don't talk about anchoring, they don't talk about where to go, they don't talk about rules of the road, basic rules of the road. I think the test needs to be, and the video needs to be completely done in our market area here with much better education. If I sell a pontoon boat, I won't let the person that buys the pontoon boat leave the dock till he has 2 hours of training on a boat that I give him, or my delivery captain gives him. So some kind of way, I don't have the solutions to it, but I know a better video and a better test would be a big advantage. And then also, when the boats do get stopped, the bootleggers, as I call them, I don't call them, what do you call them? Outlaws. Outlaws, okay, I call them bootleggers. Those people are probably creating the largest part of the problem. So if there's some weight to be added to catching them, that it's just not a $100 fine or a $200 fine, that they have to pay a bigger burden. Maybe that can help correct itself, because we only have so many code enforcements that can only do so much. So it's got to rely on the process governing itself. It can't rely on having 40,000 code enforcements out there to try to keep up with it. And that's kind of my biggest idea.
Thank you, appreciate it, sir.
All right.
John?
All right, real quick, just more or less talking about fees. I guess our fees was raised, what was it, last year or year before? Last year. And if you think about, if you go back to business tax receipts, those fees haven't been raised since the 90s. So.
We're working on that right now.
Okay.
So don't feel lonely.
But one question, is there a possibility of possibly putting a cap on our fees for like a 5-year cap or something like that?
We're the government, there's no way in hell.
That's all I got. Okay.
No, joking aside, we are working on restructuring our fees to bring ourselves up to, modern times. But thank you for the idea. Greg, let's be really quick, because there's other folks I'm sure want to talk. You made your point, now don't repeat yourself.
All right, I got new things. So we didn't talk about our group here that Mike kind of leading here. We're going to organize, and January 1st, 2021, we're going to be known as the Okaloosa County Water Sports Outburst Coalition. And our objectives are very much in line with safety and welfare of the community, obviously for protecting the interest of our industry. But we're going to be very much more involved with safety. And one of the things that we talked about in our meetings are making a better test based on our local waters. So I just want to, Captain Eller here makes a point about the test. Yeah, they're not as good as they can be, and we're going to make one specifically for Destin as part of like one of our group's objectives. Also, I just want to make it clear and just kind of for the record that obviously there's a lot of things we observe being out on the water, people acting crazy and all that, but at the end of the day, we have to be objective and look at facts, because people that are out there, yeah, maybe we know that by their boat, it says what company it is, but there also are a lot of out-of-state boaters or even residents here as well. So when we start talking about, yeah, there's a lot of incidents out there on the water, maybe not all of them are rentals, maybe there are residents, and we need to look at facts and not observations. So I just want to make that point very clear when we talk in future city council meetings, that we're looking at facts and not observations. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anyone in the middle? Come on up.
Oh, we're good to go. Kevin O'Neill, 69, Captain Kevin O'Neill, 6945 Leisure Street. And I wanted to address something. When everyone first came back, and I don't know if it was you, sir, or maybe it was Mr. Dewey Destin, they said, why are we coming back and talking about this now? Why 4 years later are we having this conversation? I might be able to shed some light on that. I actually called a meeting. I'm from Fort Walton Beach, my company is. And I actually called a meeting with our chamber, a captain from the FWC and a member from the CVB to talk about safety. Because I don't want anybody getting hurt at all, period. To the other gentleman, the captain back there, as far as charter boat captains or pontoon boats and this, I completely understand. I get it. I see people out there, even charter boat captains, like, who gave this guy his license? So trust me when I say I understand. The problem is that now we sort of feel like we're fighting for our businesses because some of these members have got up and said things like, well, sort of feels like no one actually directly said it, but it's been in tone that it's like retribution because we're pushing back. So now we're getting, oh, you can't have your boats on 98 now. We were looking past that. Well, now that we're going to make the application process even harder. So it takes away from the core principles of what we had initially got together to have this conversation from the county level, from Destin, from even just my meetings with the FWC about how to make things safer. So now those conversations have completely broken down because when I went to the county and we had this list of great things that could keep people safe, kind of disseminate our waterways a little bit better, make things better for everyone. Well, now conversations completely broken down because now we're back to square one. The list that the county brought back after they had, I don't know who put their agenda items on the list, but they were things that seemed like they were seemingly drawn out of a hat. Certainly not a professional mariner discussed like not allowing boats under bridges or something like that to keep things safe. So what I mean to say is that us as all industry professionals, veterans, every last one of us sitting here all have thousands of hours on the water. We're taken away from our ability and the most necessary thing that we have to do, which is keep our waterway safe, keep our customers safe, because it's intrinsically built into our business model. Look, if you take somebody out charter fishing and one out of every 10 of them falls off the boat, and I mean, you got a problem. You know what I mean? You got a liability problem. So if we're in here fighting about things like for parking and the medallions on the back of the boats, and they can't have backup medallions, that takes time out of my schedule. She's only one lady, Jason's only one guy, Greg's only one guy, John's only one guy. We should be meeting together to figure out not how to keep our businesses alive and figure out where we're going to put our boats, but how to keep our customers safe and how to keep our waterways and preserve the integrity of not just your legacy, sir, but mine as well. So we all have legacy in this. That's all I have to say.
Appreciate your comments. Council members, any questions? All right, seeing none, next person up. Don't come all at once, come on up. I'm working through the middle of the room, so keep it coming.
Johnny Fuller, Tailpins Water Sports. Most everything's been covered. A lot of these guys have been doing a great job, but I really have a pet peeve. Once again, this is an application for a business that hasn't been in business for several years. There should be, period, a renewal card, a 5x7 card, and say, thank you for doing a great business in Destin, Tailfins, Water Sports, and pay me my $1,000 for my 10 boats. I mean, that's what this should be about. If we followed the moratorium, we followed all the rules, you've got a packet this thick on my, because we built back in, started in 2007, and it broke ground in 2010, so it took me several years to do what I'm doing on the harbor. But bottom line, it should be a renewal card, not an application, not a permit application. I mean, we shouldn't be filling out a permit. It's ridiculous. And I just want to touch shortly on the why we can't pull our boats out of the water to do maintenance or repair, one boat at a time or two boats or whatever on my own property. Yes, Ms. Ramswell, I got a notice and a $100 fine start daily if I didn't move my boat. And I don't know if anybody else in this area, anyone else on the harbor got that notice or written notice.
When was this?
3 days ago?
3 days ago?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Thank you.
So, short and sweet, it should be a renewal, period. If we got to keep doing this process, in 2016, we were told we'd jump through the hoops to do the application, which we did. We jumped through the hoops, and then the following year, they say just going to be a renewal page, simple card or a page. That never has happened. We spoke with Mr. Lewis last year. The year before, the city manager prior to that said, yes, there should be a renewal card. And each year, either the city manager changes or the permit.
That's not your fault. I was going to ask this of Mike or Johnny, but I'm going to ask you this question because it fits right into what you just said. The disclaimer sheet is no longer here this year, and we're going to find out why. Would you or your industry have an objection if part of that disclaimer, the affidavit of a part of your file, just like my wife just renewed her concealed carry permit,
Right.
she checked a box, says none of my address, none of my stuff changed, and that she had to sign her name, and it talked about perjury, violation, all that you were subject to criminal or actually penal penalties. Would that be something that you all are willing to sign an affidavit of that to give the city staff the assurance that if you do game the system and somebody turns you in and you are caught and you checked off those boxes and said, I've done everything is true, nothing has changed, and then and I understand that I'm going to expose myself to legal ramifications as a result, do you think that's satisfactory not only to give the city teeth, because then we turn it over to the state's or to the county attorney's office or the sheriff's department, but it relieves you of that burden that we've been hearing for the last hour and 15 minutes.
Well, I think anything that we do on a renewal card or the application itself that you fill out all that stuff in your initial application. So if you do a renewal card, it's a 5x7 card like I do for my liquor license for my several restaurants that they charge me several $1,000s for, but it's a 5x7 card I sign and check off and say, follow all the rules. If that's what you're asking me, yes, we can do that, and that's what it should have been. It should have been that in 2017, which was promised to us. It didn't happen. 2018, it was promised. 2019, last year, the other city manager promised it. This Mr. Lewis 6 months ago promised us, yes, we'll get to. Instead, we got another application like we're starting a brand new business again. And to me, that's not fair.
Yeah, and that's the purpose of this workshop,
and I
is to
understand
hear this right here. Hopefully we can make a
people will
difference.
follow through this year and say, here's your card, Mr. O'Quigler, Mr. Fuller, and go on with your business so we don't have to mess with this. Waste your time and waste our time. We're the ones truly correctly following the rules in the city of Destin. The other guys in Fort Walton and on the Sound and all that, they're coming over. They're not jumping through any hoops like you're doing to us. And last but not least is, yes, if I want to pull my boat out of the water and clean and repair it or do whatever I want to do, my business is shut down 2/3 from March 1st to November 1 to March 1st. We probably do maybe 1/5 the sales that I do the rest of the year. So to hold me, and they say, well, we're writing you letters or we're writing you warnings or $100 fines because your business is still open. Yes, it's still open. The only reason my business is still open is to take care of my employees. I would love to shut down November, but I wouldn't have any employees come March 1st. I'd make much more money if I could just shut down November 1, clear out my freezers, clear everything out, just do repair and maintenance on my restaurant, and come March 1st, just start with the new staff.
You
know what I'm saying.
You're preaching to the choir when it comes
Exactly.
to that. We got
So-
5 seafood restaurants.
Yeah, and so they're not.
Mr. Destin does
The
too.
code
We understand that
enforcers,
concept.
they're not worried about my parking for my restaurant when they tell me that. They're just, that's untruth.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
No. But there's other people that get to talk. You had your,
Something new.
maybe at the end. Anyone else in this section has anything to add? Anybody over here would like to come up, make any comments? Come on. Seeing how nobody else stepped up, Mike, I'll give you the privilege because we're still within our realm of, hold on, I'm going to let him talk first. You're next. Hit the button, state your name and address, please, for the record.
Freddie Ortega, 200 Country Club Road, Shalimar. livery permit that I haven't received since moratorium started. I would like to know why I haven't received it and I have had no answers. Even my attorney told me today that he has had no answers from your city attorney. And he told me that, Joey, when I talked to him 2 meetings ago, that the parking permit or the plan was the one they're missing, which was turned in with March 29th of 19. And I just don't understand why it's, I haven't gotten any answers or any permits or anything like that.
Crickets up to this point, correct? All right, we'll look into that.
So I
noted.
would like to see if you guys can get with staff and see what's going on.
Even if the answer's no, you just want to answer?
Just why?
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions for Mr. Ortega? Go ahead.
I'd say you just need to have your attorney get with our attorney. If you already got an attorney with it, then you need to go to our attorney.
That's what I got a call from, and I talked to my attorney today, and he has nothing. Nobody's telling
We don't
me
need to say anything. If the man's got an attorney, he needs to deal with our attorney.
So,
Thanks, sir.
all right.
Michael? New, right? It's new, pretty new. Is new as good as pretty new?
Actually, a response to something that Bill said earlier, as far as the state wildlife and fisheries makes a video, a safety video for us to show. They've been making it for years and years and years. It's outdated, and it has nothing to do with this area, with Destin, Okaloosa County. So I called Mr. Farjone a few weeks ago, and I recommended to him that either he get with the city and or the county and combined, maybe you guys could get together and put a few $1,000s together and hire a company to make a local video that covers the no-wake zones, the harbor, Crab Island, all the areas that our boats can go to, make a safety video, 5 to 10 minute safety video, and require us to use that video. And if you have to charge us for it, so be it.
Thank you. And that's something that probably wouldn't be bad to have on our website just for our visitors who are bringing boats. Well, I want to thank everybody for their comments tonight. You've given us all a lot of food for thought. We got some questions we got to ask of our staff. We got to put together some items on the agenda. Council members, I strongly recommend you take your notes from tonight. And actually, it's been filmed and videoed, so you can watch it again and address our staff. And then Lance, when do you think this will be an action item on our city council meetings? Because these guys are in the process of trying to get their businesses ready for 2021.
I think we can have it back to you the first meeting in January.
Okay, that sounds good. Any comments? Mr. Destin, anyone? Okay, the first meeting in January.
I believe it's
going to
the
try to
4th.
have it before it. You all have plenty of notice through regular notifications. I want to thank everybody's comments. I just want to let you know that we may not provide all the answers that you would like. Everything may not go your way, but I think this workshop, the fact that we held it means we mean business. I've spoken with plenty of you in the industry. I think there's solutions to many of these things that you have brought up, and I look forward to the council process where we'll, in the public realm, we'll have robust discussion, and you'll still have more opportunity to make your thoughts known with the public comments as that process goes through. Again, thank you, everyone.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I got a couple comments. Go ahead, Mr. Destin. I got you next.
Thank you, Mayor. With all due respect, a workshop has a rationale behind it. It's a time for the council to get together and discuss an issue, not vote, but to take the public testimony and discuss issues so that the staff can get some direction. If we all take private notes and go to the staff and give them direction, that's called a violation of sunshine law. They need to take their direction from discussion that happens at a public meeting. And so I'm a little disturbed by that direction. The other point I would make is that the way meetings are conducted and the rules and regulations that guide those meetings are set by resolution of the council. And the rules that allow that are for a meeting or a workshop really can't be changed by any other way other than vote of the council. And so while I respect your ability and your need to try to facilitate, to make this go faster, and I don't have any problem with what we've done tonight, with the exception that we're not having a public discussion, which is what a workshop is all about. And therefore, I would request that you allow the council members to give some directions in a public meeting so that these folks who attended this meeting understand where the direction's coming from and how it was created. Otherwise, they don't know which one of us to be happy with or to be mad with. So that's my point. And on that,
That's a good point, Mr. Destin, and I agree with that. That was not the spirit or the intent. I was just wanting to try to give the most amount of public input, and I have no problem with that, and we can open this up. You guys can start that discussion right now. It's 6:58, so Ms. Ramswell has to leave in a few minutes, but I'm glad
Ms.
that
Ramswell, go first.
I'm glad that we got to this point. So, Dr. Ramswell, seeing there is a chance you may have to leave, is there anything that you'd like to bring up or direction you'd like to give staff at this time?
Well, sort of despite your early instructions, I tried to give some direction as we went, so I don't have anything further other than I think there were 3 different items that I had requested be looked into and brought back to council.
Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to address some of the things that's been said tonight, things that we've been accused of, and just I want to explain to these guys where I'm coming from, what I've seen, what I've witnessed, what I'm dealing with. Although there are several great business owners in your industry, there are multiple liars that we have to deal with. And when I say that, it's, and I've witnessed this myself. Somebody will bring in their parking agreement for their application for their business. And I've had several of them laying on a desk. And it looked like that parking agreement, or the parking was just carbon copied and handed out to several of the businesses on that same piece of property. And business 1 said, all these parking places I'm claiming for my pontoon business. Business B says, I claim all these parking places for my parasail business. Business C says, I claim all these parking places for mine, and it's just multiple of them. That's what we're dealing with. And when you say we want the process streamlined because nothing has changed, well, when code enforcement goes down there after somebody's already submitted their application, been approved, and find out, well, you've got 5 more pontoon boats, but you've got 3 more jet skis than what you said you had, you know, my bad, I'll pay for them. Well, you got caught. So, no, there has been change. So we're dealing with that. So that's why, I mean, we can't go to one business and say, well, you know, you run a tight ship, you know, we've never caught you doing anything, you know, just sign this, say nothing's changed. And then go to this guy and say, well, you know, you've been caught multiple times, you know, it ain't gonna fly. So it's like the mayor said, if you'd be willing to sign an affidavit or something saying that, you know, nothing's changed, but if we catch you and one thing's changed, then you agree to forfeit your license, all your pontoon boats, your jet skis, you're out of business. Leave town, sell out, you're gone. You're not going to do it because there's too many liars lying on their application, and you've admitted it tonight. And then it was stated that, you know, we're targeting people. Only people that were storing their boats on land, you know, got a citation. Well, when somebody complains of a vehicle or a trailer parked in somebody's yard that's not sitting on an approved pad. And we go write them a citation, and they have to bring it up to speed. We're not targeting that person. We can't say, okay, well, before we can write this citation, we got to ride all over town and gather all these people up that's got a trailer, because there's a lot of them in their side yard or whatever, and write them a citation too. So we're not targeting people. If somebody complains about something, then code enforcement's got to go address it. My thought with the repairing boats on the property, have no problem with it. Pull the boats up, fix them, scrape them, paint them, whatever. But when that boat is still sitting there, set to the back, and it's finished, it's ready to go for the next season, and it sits there for 2 months, I don't care what you call it, it's storing that boat there. So how can you, I mean, it's kind of like saying that, well, I'm paying taxes, property taxes on my home, but I leave for 6 months vacation, so I don't think I should have to pay property tax on it for 6 months because I wasn't there. But you fill down an application saying I'm going to operate a business for 12 months, and then business slows down and say, well, I'm going to pull it all out, and I had to have these parking places for this business, but things have changed, so I'm going to just store them all up in the parking lot now for 2 or 3 months. Well, you agreed that you would have X amount of parking for 12 months to run your business out of, and now you don't. So that's where I guess the citations come from for the LDC. And I get a kick out of, I've heard this saying tonight several times: safety, 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 safety. We'll spend thousands of dollars on a video, we'll make them watch it, no problem. Well, it's not the video. We don't get complaints on charter boats. We don't get complaints on sailboats. We don't get complaints on private center console boats that are going fishing. We don't get complaints on restaurants. We don't get complaints on the tattoo parlors or the pawn shops. This council and the staff is sick and tired of hearing complaints on pontoon boats and jet skis. Sick of it. My family was in it. And I've witnessed this there and other places where they rent to a person, they push him off the dock and wish him best of luck. And when you come back, when you get about 20 feet, just shut it down. Throw us a rope, we'll pull you in. Don't even attempt to try to dock it. So you can watch the video all you want, but when you walk down to that dock and you look at all those jet skis that are beat all to hell, that the front of them are tore all to hell and pieces are missing. Bill Pearson is a welder and makes a hell of a living welding these pontoon boats back together because they're beat all to hell. Go look at the charter boats. Go look at the Dolphin Cruise boats. They're not beat all to hell. So there's a problem. You're renting a boat to somebody that has no idea about how to drive one or operate one in these waters. I've seen them. They've never even been on a boat. Well, all you got to be is 25 years old or whatever. We'll rent you one, and we'll shove you off, and y'all have a great time and good luck to you. And when you come back, we've got a team of mechanics and welders up here to weld this thing back together, and for the next guy. That's what we're dealing with. That's what we're seeing. I hear what you're saying, but you got to see what we're dealing with. So it's just. It's funny as far as, and it's not funny as far as, safety. We're all about safety. You can't make it safe because you're renting a boat you might as well be renting it to a blind guy and shoving him off and telling him, be back in 4 hours or 8 hours. You're going to rent some boats to some good people that own boats themselves, and you come down and run them. But to me, when you just look at them and you see that these jet skis and pontoon boats are beat up and tore up, why is that? Why are the front of the jet skis, the molding and stuff, just completely off of them? And there's there's wood, there's treated wood, there's pilings and dock boards that are wedged in, woods wedged in the nuts and bolts and stuff of them where they ran into stuff. How is that safe? So I mean, we gotta meet in the middle somewhere, and I mean, we get accused of, you know, targeting, or get accused of just singling out, you know, delivery vessels, and then we get accused for singling out short-term rentals. But the delivery vessels want the charter boats to be included in it. Well, if we want the charter boats to be compared to pontoon boats, then let's compare pontoon boats to charter boats. Let's make all pontoon boats have a licensed captain on them, just like a charter boat has to. We can't just go to cherry picking and say, well, we want this, but we don't want that, because that doesn't work with us. I mean, I don't know what we're going to do. I mean, something's got to be done, but you know, like I say, there's a lot of great guys in this industry that run a top-notch business. You know, and I hate it for them that they have to go through, you know, everything that, you know, we got to put in line for the bad guy. It's just like when we pass an ordinance, you know, for people who's got trash in their Breener yard. It's not everybody, but we got to pass it for everybody. So I would just want you guys to know what I'm dealing with and what I'm seeing, the complaints that I'm getting, so you'll know what, I guess, where my decision's coming from. I mean, I'm not just taking y'all's ideas and your suggestions, which some of them are great, but I got to take the whole thing. I got to take it all and make the best decision I can, and hopefully we can give the staff some good direction. And I hope that you know, this harbor study will tell us something. I guess we can't make an ordinance or make policy without some kind of guideline, somebody telling us, you know, that yeah, it's at capacity, or no, it's not at capacity. So I'm going to yield the floor at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Mr. Destin. I'm just going to go down the line, by the way,
Sounds good.
guys.
Thank you, Mayor. Listening to the rest of the council and their comments, I would say that there's probably agreement that the application is too complicated, too cumbersome. You know, I would encourage staff to try to fix that. The affidavit of no change should be reinstated, but make it more precise. Have a list. Maybe it needs to be a page long, 2 pages. My parking has not changed. My bathrooms are still here. Go down the list so they can precisely say what's not changed, and it'll have a little more teeth in it. But I have looked at those applications, and they're pretty long and they're pretty complicated. In staff's defense, I would say that the citations or the warning letters they issued about parking in parking lots, to my understanding, were places where there were other businesses that were working that had a required amount of parking that had to be there, such as a restaurant, or such as, you know, a restaurant has so many parking spaces that it is required to have. They are required to have those every day. You know, my business is slower on Monday than it is on Friday. Doesn't mean I don't have to have those required parking on Monday, and have them on Friday is okay. So my understanding is that's those folks who got letters, and if that's not the case, then we may have a problem. So I would encourage you to try to streamline. I would also point out that while they didn't get the licenses out, and we need to in a timely fashion, otherwise it makes the whole process meaningless. They did not attempt to shut anybody down because they didn't have the licenses out, so that was a proper action to take. But just, you know, real general, we need to make it simpler. We need to make it easier to get through. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. Mr. Overdare.
Okay, so I've never owned a livery business, so I kind of have a hard time sharing your experiences. So I have to listen to you, and I will tell you, I'm taking you at your word of what you say is going wrong and what the problems are that you're having with your businesses. I've owned businesses, but I've never owned a livery business. So in the businesses that I had to fill out licenses, and I've done that, but I never saw a problem with it. I never had anything that was 10 pages long. I never had anybody tell me that they were going to fix something and they didn't fix it. If we went to somebody at the state level that I worked with, and they said they were going to fix something, and they kept telling me that year after year after year, somebody at that place probably wouldn't have been there any longer. So what I'm hearing you're saying is, a gentleman comes and says he's trying to get a license since 2019, and he can't, and now he has to hire an attorney, and the attorney can't even figure out why he's not getting a license. There's something wrong with the system, and so, I mean, I agree with Councilman Braden that I don't know what the fix is or what the answer is. You know, the only kind of frame of reference that I have for this whole mess like we think we've got here is kind of what we had with the short-term rentals. We had a real problem with short-term rentals. We knew that things were being done wrong, and we knew that things were from the staff that they had to have something better to do, a better way to handle it. I'm not sure that we don't need a livery vessel task force similar to what we had for the short-term rentals to go through all this and have both sides hear what they see as a problem and come up with fixes that everybody can agree on, and then have them bring those fixes to the city council, just like the short-term rental task force did. Because like I said, I'm taking you at your word, because I've never been in the livery business. So, it seems to me like you're all hardworking, honest people, just trying to do the right thing, and somehow it's not working for you. And why it's not working for you, I don't know. I can't blame the staff, because the staff is following whatever guidelines they have in both the land development code and all the ordinances that we have. But that's all stuff that we've done and we've given to them and told them this is how you got to conduct business. So if that's got to be fixed, let's fix it. So I would just like to have something that gives us some direction, like I said, to the city council to tell staff this is what you got to do to fix it.
Johnny? Thank you. Thanks for coming and putting the presentation together. It's been enlightening for me. This is a good one for, I think, Kevin and I to get our feet wet with the council. I think that, you know, I've done my best to keep up with this whole deal. Good ways before, just to give you guys some confidence. I didn't just walk in here and not know anything about any of this, and gotten to talk to a bunch of you guys and gals, and appreciate y'all reaching out. I've got a couple things, and I don't want to keep you guys here all night. I echo what everyone in the room is saying, that it needs to be more streamlined. You guys need to be treated as fairly as anybody else who's doing business in this town. They've got to come to the city and get, you know, that's the main concern that I get from those of you who I've spoken to. The majority of y'all that I've spoken to, is that you want to be treated like everybody else in town, and I think we're all in agreement to that. One of the gentlemen tonight said you want to base this on facts. Where do we get all the facts from? I mean, we can go and cherry pick facts from the FWC or the state or the city or whomever. I think that one of the things that, just from what I can tell over the last few months of being around, is we've got a federally funded harbor study coming to town in March. Seems like to me that's where our facts are going to come from. So if you want to base this all on facts, I think that's where it needs to come from. Another concern of mine is one of the concerns I have is if the harbor study comes back and says, well, you guys can have, I mean, obviously there's going to be 1,000 different factors that go into this. If we go to max capacity on boats allowed in the harbor and we stack it with pontoon boats, charter boats, wave runners, whomever, then where do my family members who want to rent a slip during cobia season and want to bring a boat to the harbor and fish out of the harbor every day, how does that affect the locals who want to have boats in the harbor and rent space there? And I know this is me kind of processing a lot of what we've heard tonight. I've had conversations with a lot of y'all, and not throwing anybody under the bus here, but everything that I've talked about, not once did we talk about, one conversation that I had, we talked about safety. And that's everybody's concern here tonight. And I think that's the number one deal is safety. I think we can all agree on that. And then just one, Mike, you had mentioned the three. It seems like you're giving us three options, and they're the only three options. Mayor, you mentioned to me that there is a moratorium on charter boats currently. How does that affect, in the grand scheme of things, what is that moratorium on? If charter boats are put into this moratorium, how does that, I don't think that affects you guys very well. And everybody I've spoken to in the charter business, I have a lot of friends in that business, say, do it. Put us in another moratorium. I think they've kind of gone to it in a way that advances their business, and they make a whole lot more money because of it. But this is not direction. This is me more or less processing everything I've heard tonight and heard from the last couple months. So that's all I've got.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for coming tonight. Really, really appreciate it, and thank you for allowing us to give our final say here. Councilman Destin, I appreciate what you said. Is this our first meeting we had, the second reading of this moratorium, the discussion about having this meeting tonight, was it correct that this is like our first workshop on the livery vessel ordinance in the past couple of years, or do you all know that? Have we had more than one, second one?
We had two stakeholder meetings earlier this year, January of 2020, in addition to February 28th was actually the last livery stakeholder meeting we held, and then unfortunately COVID happened.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm glad that we're doing what we're doing here tonight. I think this is very beneficial. First, Mr. Braden, I know you don't mean anything like for all of us, but just to speak to one thing you said, Johnny and I are new. The other ones aren't here right now. Mr. Destin, you've been here before, but we haven't gotten those complaints and calls yet. I'm sure we will come season, but in my short tenure so far, we've just gotten some emails and calls about other items that are going on in the city. So I'm sure they're coming one day, but so far I've had more conversations and calls from the people in this room than the people that are against the people in this room. I was going back through this 4-year-old documents that we received to prepare for this meeting, and just to highlight a couple of things for people that might not know or don't recall. One of the items that I think Mr. Fisher mentioned about the purpose of this original vessel rental permit ordinance was to provide a reasonable means. And I'm not saying that nobody thinks we're not doing reasonable things. That's what the majority of the discussion was tonight, was how to make this application process more reasonable and the renewal application. So I think we're all in agreement there. So I'm glad to hear that. The past, which he's not here anymore, Mr. Schmidt, which I know you thought that was, called me Steve that one night. But, and again, this is, previous meetings, but just it was told to the council was that this particular ordinance, there's nothing in this ordinance that would limit the number of vessels an owner can operate. And the main goal of this ordinance is to eliminate the fly-by-night operators. So that was, discussed years past. So I would say in regards to the renewal application Mr. Destin's talking about and to staff, I do agree that the whole affidavit process would be very important to put back together, but at the same time, I don't think we can have that one affidavit for all business owners, because if you are renting or leasing your property, because it is the owners of that property's responsibility of what's going on that property, we might need to look at possibly having two different type of affidavits from leasees and owners. Maybe Mr. Rogers, he owns his property, so he has one affidavit, but maybe John has a different one because he's leasing. So if Mr. Destin does something that John doesn't know about, we don't want John to sign his life away. And then because Mr. Destin changed something. So just, if we do the affidavit, I think we should definitely keep in consideration of a couple of options there. So make it easier. And I would also think, and this is probably my last thing, and we'll get going, I guess. So, I'm sure Mr. Fisher or some other people that have been here for a long time, I mean, we're at the numbers that you guys are at right now this past season, which are just breaking records, I'm sure. I mean, everybody did a lot of business. Every year after year, you're probably breaking records. I mean, my business broke records. I mean, it's fantastic. But unfortunately, a lot of the rules that maybe are being put in place are because, like somebody said, too much of one thing can be bad, and sometimes we get to that point where we got to figure this out, and maybe too much was put in place. Maybe there was too much put in place, and I think due to the process of what we're doing right now, and unfortunately maybe it's taken 3 or 4 years, maybe there was some miscommunication with staff members, maybe they did some things wrong, but I think because of the livery vessels and the pontoon rental business and the way it's booming right now, and it has been for the past few years, I mean, it's a work in progress to get to what we're doing, I guess, is all I'm trying to say. And as we know, these meetings, they take a long time, and there's second readings, first readings, and if you make a change, it's got to go back to a first reading and all that. So maybe 3 or 4 years seems like a long time, but maybe it's not, some of this stuff. And just like the short-term rentals that y'all were talking about earlier, people were selling $15 million homes on 30A because the short-term rental market is hot. And things have to be done to control some of that sometimes, and I think that's what we're doing with the vessels. But I also realize what we're doing tonight is that we hear y'all, and I think a lot of us are in agreement, I hope so, that we're going to make the application process hopefully more simplified, because it should be, But at the same time, as a resident, if I want to get a driveway, I got to fill out like 5 pages for a permit for a driveway. So sometimes you just got to fill out paperwork, even though you don't want to fill out paperwork. But I feel good about where we're at right now. And I think I really hope that we can have a couple of small changes, because most of the stuff that we heard about tonight was about the application, the renewal of the application, and one gentleman who's been waiting for 2 years to get a permit application approved. I know we talked about the legality of stuff like that, and I think it is important, but I think this veteran owners that are trying to renew their licenses and things like that are very important to get fixed sooner than later. So that's all I got for now, and looking forward to next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Well, I wasn't Kenny, but I'm going to make some now. I think for staff, city manager, our attorneys who are watching this, it's pretty clear the intent, I think, of the council is we want to see a more refined and direct process to livery vessel registrations. We are already, Lance, you and I talked today, ever since you've been city manager, all you've done is to try to improve the processes of how this city's run. That's what the whole purpose of the InterGov program that we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars for, is to increase these processes. I think some of this application, as I spoke with Mike on the phone today, some of the requirements is just the city staff, without good guidance from us, is just trying to cover all the bases. They don't want the criticism of not being accountable in the permitting process if one of the council members says, why wasn't this addressed? I think they kind of overdid it after looking at it, and I think that we will get it refined. I think what's critical, especially with folks that have been in business for 10 or 15 or 20 years on the harbor, there's a lot of these guys' stuff hasn't changed, and especially hasn't changed since the moratorium, because they haven't grown. They haven't added any more boats. They've been stuck to the regulations. The problem with the LDC is almost a problem of itself. The staff's just, finally, we got a code. So it's one thing to where you can feel like a selective enforcement of certain issues, but a lot of it is we're finally, in the first time in decades, have the resources to actually enforce the rules and regulations that we've had for years and years and years. And it appears like it's only being applied arbitrarily now. No, what it is it's finally being applied and not arbitrarily. It was supposed to be done the whole time and it hasn't been. So, but we can work through those issues. What I do want to speak of is when this came an issue, I spent some time looking at the originality of the moratorium in the first place. How was all the discussions? I read all the minutes of the the Harbor Board CRA and the discussions amongst council members, because I wasn't privy to any of that long before I ever became mayor. And a couple of things was the issue of safety was a motivational factor. That to me was a sidebar. The issue of catching illegal operators, that was a sidebar. The issue of polluting the waters, that was a sidebar issue of the moratorium. The true intent from reading all the documents and understanding our community after living in it for a really long time. See, I got gray hair. The intent of that moratorium was because there was an clear apparent overcapitalization of the livery vessels in Destin Harbor, and it was a direct threat to our heritage of being a working waterfront and a commercial fishing and charter industry. It wasn't intentional on y'all's part. It was a direct result is that people could make more money renting pontoon boats, landowners especially, make more money and charge more because a guy could stick 4 pontoon boats renters in there versus a 6-pack charter boat. So the economics of it was an actual direct threat because the charter industry, the new guys, the generational transfer of our heritage was at jeopardy because there was no place to run a business. Y'all experience that now with the moratorium. One of the biggest things you talked about adding the charter industry as part of the moratorium, well, the federally permitted boats have been in one since 2003. The cutoff date was 1996, so you had to prove from 96 to 2003 that you were a viable participant in the fishery. The only place there is overcapitalization in the charter industry today is the state licensed guides. We have state licensed guides that can't operate in Destin because there's no place to operate. Some of them are trying to do the back door thing and launching at Joe's Bayou and trying to run their business out of a public boat ramp. That has its own set of challenges and is legal at the moment. There is no regulation against that. So that sign says, "Welcome to Destin, the luckiest fishing village in the world." We have a council member here his family founded this community. And they didn't found it renting pontoon rentals or selling condominiums. They were commercial fishers from the New England area. And that carried this community for decades, generations, in fact, many generations. And it's okay to have the beautiful beaches and the condominiums, and it's okay to have pontoon rentals and paddle boards and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, we can't do it and jeopardize our heritage. One of the biggest things this council did since I became mayor is they passed a new comprehensive plan. They've developed a future land use map. They've made amendments we're redoing our land development code. And it's all because of the way this community was haphazardly built to make $1. Most everybody on this council can readily admit, myself included, that there were things that were done and built and happened in our community over the last 35 years that probably wasn't the best way to do it. And so and you don't have to stay on social media very long to see how many of the people that live in our community believe that is a fact and support the fact that we're trying to rein back things. And now our community is old enough now, it's not new development, it's redevelopment. And so they've set some guidelines so when we redevelop, it's going to be in a manner that preserves the heritage and the uniqueness of Destin Harbor. The moratorium, and some of you may disagree, but that moratorium has brought value to your business, your individual business. Every one of those medallions gives you inherent value that you don't get if you're operating out of Pensacola or Fort Walton Beach. Because the people that come in from the west will pay more money to go with you because they don't want to go over the Destin Bridge and the Brooks Bridge to go do business. So, and one of the other focuses of this TDC, the Destin Council, the Okaloosa County Commissioners, you see what's going on with the Crab Island issue, is we want this to be a good place for people who want to stay. And so, with all of those things, when all that comes together, this council and this city and the county commissions are trying to do things to do it from this point forward the right way. The good news for your industry is under that moratorium, this city is not trying to reduce your footprint in the harbor today. You've been guaranteed access to your business model to continue. And me personally, I want to see this moratorium become not a annual moratorium. I think, in spite of the capacity study, I think we have enough. And I think this community thinks we have enough. And if we did a straw vote with the, there's been this little move where we're taking it to the voters for serious issues in the city of Destin. Y'all don't want to go there. You won't win that referendum. So here's what we got to do. You're doing business profitably in the city of Destin. You've brought out some great points about the burdens that have been put upon you. You just want to be profitable and you want to do it in a good manner. And I think that's what we can fix. We can fix the processes for you to do business in a reasonable manner in this town. Also, I think we can do it in a manner to give us the teeth to enforce the bad operators or the fly-by-night outlaw operators that try to come and infringe on your territory. So I think there's plenty of room for us to have a cooperative attitude because it's going to be in everybody's best interest, especially yours. In that last meeting, that one gentleman said, yeah, I turn down 350 calls a day. You heard my comment to him. Well, then you're not charging enough. And the American dream is to make more and work less. And this medallion, this moratorium put you all in the driver's seat to do exactly that. I've seen that. Mike shared with me all the issues with the document to renew. As usual with government, we've actually dug our own hole here with those requirements. Even without COVID, even with a full staff, I don't think they could go through all that documentation in a reasonable amount of time. Like I said, my wife just went and got a concealed carry permit. That's pretty important to carry a gun. And she did it in 5 minutes and $35 because nothing changed from the time when she got her very first one. And I think that's the road we need to go down. And I think it's very doable. Our legal staff in this council, I think, is willing to do that. And I think in the end, there won't be this adversarial attitude between the city council and the staff and your business because you've brought up legitimate claims that I think all of them are fixable. There's some discussion and maybe a difference of opinion on what definition or the statutes may be. And if you feel this council doesn't relinquish on those, and if you feel you got to go through the courts, you got to do what you got to do for your business. Hopefully we can come up with some solutions to prevent that from happening. So, I think everybody's had a say. Do you have any of the folks would like to give some clear guidance for our staff with the comments that are up to this point? Rodney, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, it was for staff. When this comes back, I guess the first meeting in January, it does seem like that the biggest problem that I've heard tonight was the application process. When you do bring that back, if it can be shortened, and it might not be able to be shortened, can you tell us why you're asking for each item on that application? Why is that necessary for the city to require that on that application? That may help us narrow it down. I don't want to tell staff, shorten it up, and they're crossing things off that we legally need or whatever. But if you can just say, this is the requirements, and this is why we need this requirements, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, give a justification for what you've come up with. I'm just going to work all the way down. Go ahead, Mr. Destin.
Just a brief comment, and I do it for the education of our folks that came tonight, and for the rest of the people here that have not been here. I guess I will be the memory for the council. Of course, my memory is not nearly what it used to be, but this is not our first capacity study. In the late 80s, we had to do a capacity study on how many boat slips could be in the harbor. Or the state of Florida said they would put a moratorium on boat slips. And you talk about getting people wound up that bought waterfront property and now you can't have a slip. So we hired an engineering firm. I think it was Baskerville and Donovan. I've talked to Lewis and we can't find it. It's gone. Well, that's 30-some years ago. But the bright part of this story is the capacity they put on the number of slips in the harbor, to the best of my knowledge, we still have not reached. And that was 35 years ago. So what's going to come out of the capacity study? Let's wait and see. It may not be what you all fear it is, which is just a way to have data to put you out of business. It may well say something different altogether. Until we do it, we won't know.
Well, I do think that we listened to you tonight, and I think that staff is going to come up with some kind of solutions that we can endorse and hopefully help you get your business done in a more efficient way and maybe an easier way, and keep you profitable and keep you working to do all the businesses that serve people here in Destin. I mean, people come to Destin and a lot of them want to go fishing, but a lot of them want to go on jet skis and a lot of them want to go on pontoon boats. And so you provide something for them. And so I'm happy to have you here, and hopefully we can help you.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, I think just to reiterate, I mean, I understand that you feel like you're being targeted. And I just want to reiterate, I know for myself, and I think I speak for everybody, is that we care about you guys, and y'all are an integral part of our community in doing business and living, and we got to coincide, we got to do, we want to do as best by y'all as we can. So I think if we're missing anything that you would like for us to direct staff, if we're missing anything, I feel like we're all on the same page here, but if we're missing anything, you know, what would that be? How would you like us to guide and lead and direct staff?
I just want to make sure I understand what's coming in January, since, you know, maybe I don't want to speak for Johnny, but so action items that are coming in January, do we need to ask more in January, or like what is coming in January at this first meeting from staff? So I don't make sure I miss anything.
Now, what we'll do is Ray will compile a list of all the suggestions that you made for staff to bring back, and we'll try to bring back bullet lists of those items. And plus, I think all of us are taking notes, so.
That's right. I just
We don't want
to
the list,
understand
we
what's
want
coming.
things, we don't want a list of what was spoken to tonight. We actually want something brought back, some recommendations from staff.
Yeah, exactly. And what we recorded were things that you want us to bring back to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Lucky for you all, I'm not going to say one more thing other than meeting adjourned, but I do have a couple people that would like to make a comment. So I will allow you that privilege. Come on up, even though we may not disagree or we may not agree with anything you're going to say.
Hey.
Go ahead.
All right.
And we'll wrap this up.
Real quick. So 11 years ago, I started my company with Donna and Olin Marler, and you guys know the Marlers. The Marlers probably have the longest running charter fishing fleet in Destin, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're over 50 years now. And before Olin passed away, I was talking with him, and I asked him how he was able to keep his business going for 50 years. And he said, Greg, you got to change. He's like, at one time he had 9 charter boats, and by the time he passed, he had 2 dolphin sightseeing boats, and he had the Hydrojet, which is at his property, which he doesn't own. It was being built. The boat's still in Wetumpka, Alabama, being serviced, which might not even go in production. But the fact of the matter is, here's a long-time charter fisherman that is constantly changing his business to adapt to current times. And we can agree that there are some industries that a lot of folks are just not jumping in. And golf is probably one of them. And just being in this business for 11 years, I have a lot of charter fishermen calling me and saying, Greg, I'm not making the money I used to. It's nothing to do with slip space. I'm not making the money I'm used to because people are not willing to pay the hourly rate they did 6 years ago. So what are they doing? They're taking people on trips to Crab Island. That's how they're pivoting their business. They're selling their boat, they're buying pontoon boats so they can charter people to Crab Island. They're starting dolphin sightseeing tours. So to Olin's point, how was he able to be here for 50-something years? Because he pivoted in different directions. In the 80s, he offered party boat fishing. In the 90s, he went to dolphin sightseeing. And that's how he was able to stay in business. And they're going to be in business for another 50 years if they're under the same leadership, because that's the attitude. And his wife started a booking agency with me, which is very popular now. So I just want to make that point. Same to the charter fishing industry, which, again, I'm a huge fan. I sell a ton on TripShock. I am not here to speak ill of the charter fishing industry, but I'm just trying to allude to the heritage of the fishing industry, of us being a working, historic fishing industry, whatever. Things are just changing, and just to look at how charter fishing gets booked. Most charter fishermen now get booked from a company from Serbia, Fishing Booker. That's how things have gone, and that's just how things change. People don't go to the harbor and book things from booths, they do it online. Also, they're just, in general, things are just changing. I'm not going to go into more specifics, but I just want to make a change there. It's not about slip space. It's about this industry is changing, and you have to pivot. Ask Donna and Olin Marler. Well, you can't ask Olin, but you can ask Donna how she's able to stay in business for 50 years. Thank you.
You're a hell of a salesman, but with my dying breath, I'm going to fight to preserve the heritage of our industry, and you and I will never agree on that. All right, guys, but we can still be friends. All right. Thank you very much for attending. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.